The Unspoken Solution. In particular, we're talking about diet. Now, Dr. Pompa, you have been talking about this diet, this one particular diet that has been proven to not only prevent diabetes, but even pull people through diabetes and turn this diagnosis around, and that is staggering to me. So I know that the coined name that you have for your diet is the cellular healing diet.
Right.
So tell me about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is proven, at least the components of the diet are proven to really reverse, diabetes. And it is the cellular healing diet because it deals with the cell. I have a mantra that says, hey, if you don't fix the cell, you'll never get well.
Wow.
Look, the problem is this, when we talk about an unspoken truth. The fact is that we are in an epidemic of hormone problems today. Diabetes is just one of them. We have thyroid conditions. We have the inability to lose weight, hormone dysregulation. I think it's estimated that 95% of all women in this country are hormonally dysregulated.
Wow.
I mean, that is a massive epidemic and growing. I mean, not just with diabetes. Well, how are we actually treating it? We are giving people more hormones, and that's the solution to the problem. Look, there's a time and a place, right? There's even a time to take a hormone. However, even in the alternative world, we're now evolving into bioidentical hormones, which have less side effects and might be a better solution. However, and there's a time for a crutch, this is not addressing the cause. This diet is called the cellular healing diet because it addresses where the problem is, and that's the cell. I have to always educate, on this topic of hormone resistance. We've heard, and many of you watching this, you probably heard the phrase insulin resistance. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, that means what I'm talking about here. That, see, there's receptors to insulin. Insulin's a hormone. Okay, and by the way, I could be talking about a thyroid condition. I could be talking about, any hormone. The receptor to the hormone is on the cell. So imagine this as being the cell, and from the cell, or the cell membrane, comes these little antennas, kind of like a cell phone tower. So if your cell phone is working just fine, if you're not near one of these towers, can you get in touch with anyone and your message get through? Absolutely not, right? Okay, so these are the receptors. You could have plenty of hormone, but yet if the hormone can't get in touch with the receptor, or if there's something wrong with the receptor, the message isn't going to get in. All right, so what's type 2 diabetes? Type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance, meaning that you have plenty of insulin. But the problem is the insulin can't communicate with the receptor, like the cell phone tower, and get its message to bring glucose in the cell. So what happens is glucose or blood sugar rises. If you want to degenerate faster than anybody that you know, which I'm sure most of you don't, inside and outside. So if you want to age faster on the inside or the outside, raise your glucose and insulin up.
Wow.
And really that's the recipe for disaster. And we said, I believe in the intro, that look, just because you're taking medication, it may lower your glucose.
Right.
It may even make you feel a little better. But it still really keeps you in the statistics, the reality of the degeneration statistics, meaning that 68% of those with diabetes end up with heart disease. 16% strokes, 70% end up with neuropathies, literally where their nerves are degenerating and they lose appendages, right?
Well, because what you're saying is the cell's not healed. So the medication that folks are on for diabetes may indeed be lowering the glucose, which help them feel better, but it doesn't address the real problem. It doesn't address what was causing the body to respond with diabetes in the first place.
It doesn't address the cell.
So you're still susceptible to all these degenerative diseases, which in turn are still inflammatory or hormone resistant diseases.
Absolutely. You never fix the problem.
You never fix the problem. Phenomenally, just fascinating. It sounds so simple, yet it's not being told. It's just one of the most amazing things. So when you talk about the cellular healing diet and fixing the cell, the most amazing component or teaching that you do when you talk to me about the receptors coming from the cell, it's almost what those receptors are lodged in and what that is made out of, and it correlates with diet. So educate us on that.
Well, look, one of the components to the cellular healing diet, I think may, shock some of our viewing audience, is that it's a high-fat diet.
Wow.
Okay, let's step back. I may have lost some of you here,
That's
but
right.
and I'm going to pull you back into this reality. When we look at the Diabetes Association, the diet, they promote a what type of diet?
Fat-free, low fat.
Absolutely. I mean, with the Heart Disease Association, right? I mean, weight loss, low fat. You want to lose weight, heart disease, right? It's low fat, low fat. Look, how's this working out for us? We're the fattest country in the world. We have more diabetes and heart disease than any country in the world. Look, the low fat diet has been proven wrong. Why aren't we hearing it?
Wow.
Why are they recommending a diet that not only doesn't work for diabetes, but there's components to the diet that actually cause diabetes? And yet, so you're saying out there, how could this be? How could our government recommend something that actually, causes diabetes? Well, look, there's something in government, and you and I have spoken about this. Once it gets out there, you can't pull it back.
It's tough.
That's the low fat principle. That's this diet that we know not only doesn't work, but it's causing problems. The low fat, this is problem number one with the diet, is that low fat actually makes things worse. Look, new studies. I can't even say new, because really some of these studies even back in 2009, and new studies have shown that high fat diets, okay, you ready for this? Diets high in saturated fat and cholesterol. I'm thinking of one study right now that showed that really the more saturated fat that people ate in the diet, the more they improved in diabetes. And actually there was one in atherosclerosis, heart disease, that showed that the more fat that the women ate in the study, the more reversal of atherosclerosis. But in this particular study, there was a 3-fold improvement in diabetes for those who ate saturated fat. Matter of fact, saturated fat was the only fat actually that made the improvement.
Wow.
Yeah, so I know it's opposite of what they've been told. Saturated fat is the demon. However, 55% of breast milk is saturated fat, right? Saturated fat is in avocados, grass-fed meat, which every healthy culture ever in the history of man has eaten these fats.
Wow.
And now we know that not only are they not bad, they actually are the needed fats.
They need it.
Look, the hormone epidemic doesn't start or stop with diabetes. We're talking about thyroid epidemic. We're talking about, again, 95% of women in this country are hormonally dysregulated. This is massive. We're talking about saturated fat in all these new studies is really the fat that really can make the biggest difference. Here's why, and you alluded to it. These receptors that I said, this is the problem. It's not giving people more hormones is not the answer, although this is what we think is the answer. And there might be a time to do that. However, the problem is fixing the receptor, which is on the cell membrane. Okay? These receptors, they ride on something called a lipid raft. That's a fat made of what? Or a raft made of what?
Made of fat.
Yes. The two fats that make the majority of that raft and stabilize this receptor, that cell phone tower, is saturated fat and cholesterol. So when I look at these studies,
unbelievable,
it doesn't surprise me of the results of these studies that saturated fat is this missing nutrient that so many people need, because it stabilizes the cell membrane and it really fixes the receptor. And that's the key, kids. It's like if you have to get to the receptor, if you fix the receptor, you're going to fix the hormone problem. It's not about giving more hormones. The best example I can give them is if your car runs out of gasoline and you can't get in the gas tank because it's locked, right? Which some of those lock, I think, right? Okay, so it's a good analogy. Getting a ton of gasoline, more gasoline, and dumping it on the car because you can't get it in the car, is that going to make your car run better?
I'm not going to go anywhere.
You're not going to go anywhere. Well, this is exactly what we're doing today with these hormone conditions, including diabetes, is we're just giving more hormone.
Wow. And we're not getting it in.
We're not getting it in the car because the receptor of the cell can't hear the hormone.
Wow.
So look, type 2 diabetes is referred to as insulin resistance. And what does that actually mean? That means exactly what I'm saying. The receptor can't communicate with the hormone. Diabetics have plenty of insulin. It's just not communicating with the receptor. And we have to talk about really what's going on, why these receptors are blunted, because there is a reason why and what's actually causing it. But because it can't hear it, that's resistance. So plenty of insulin. Insulin can't get its message in, glucose is rising in the blood. That is type 2 diabetes. That's called hormone resistance. Whether it's thyroid hormone, I could be talking the same about thyroid hormone, or any other hormone. We're giving more hormones and it's not getting its job done.
So what you're telling me is this lipid raft that the receptors actually are lodged in is made of saturated fat and cholesterol, two things that have been demonize, saying stay away from,
right.
that actually, because that raft is made out of those things, when that begins to heal, that receptor grows back. Now I can hear the hormone. Now my diabetes is reversing.
Yes.
So it's fascinating. So takeaway number one is actually getting these good fats back into your diet and stop eating maybe bad fats, right? So this isn't a no-fat diet. This is a high good fat diet, right?
Well, good fat.
Good
we
fat.
Call good.
Yeah, good fat, a high good fat diet. So talk to me about the differences. What is a good fat versus bad fat? Let's give an example.
Well, look, I mean, obviously they've already been educated that saturated fat and cholesterol are bad fats.
Yeah.
And, I could do a whole lecture on why cholesterol is so important, and it's not the demon that you think it is. But that's up for another day. You know, obviously, you know, saturated fat, we'd have to step back and say, how did this all get started? And some junk studies years ago by a gentleman named Ansel Keys really started this whole bad philosophy. What's been held up as the good fat is one of which is called polyunsaturated fats. And matter of fact, when we look at the diabetes diet, the Diabetes Association diet, it says get rid of these fats, eat low fat, low saturated fat and cholesterol, and elevate your polyunsaturated fats. Well, that doesn't mean anything to probably anyone. What are these fats? Well, vegetable oils are polyunsaturated fats. And matter of fact, it's the number one polyunsaturated fat that most people are consuming. It's in everything that you eat. It's in pretzels, crackers, breads, you name it, everything. And they're promoting this as a good thing. Well, look, studies show that these fats oxidize, meaning that they denature very easily. Matter of fact, look, I don't have a problem with vegetable oils when it's in vegetables. Because
makes sense,
there's things in vegetables that stabilize those important fats, right? But when you extract it from a vegetable and now you have this oil, it gets denatured. Most people watching, I'm sure, are familiar with trans fats, hydrogenated fats, and know they're bad, right? You know, these things are bad, stay away from them. However, vegetable oils promoted by the Diabetes Association, you know, these polyunsaturated fats, we know that they oxidize. They come in, fat attracts fat. So these fats come in and they stick to this membrane, okay, the cell membrane that has what? The receptors.
The receptors,
okay? Remember, if you're going to fix hormone problems, you have to fix the what?
The receptor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so they stick to the outside membrane and it drives inflammation. And I believe that most people watching this have heard that inflammation is the cause of the majority of diseases today, whether it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, you know, weight loss resistance. Inflammation is the cause. Well, this is what we mean. You know, we're not talking just about a sore knee or a sore ankle. We're talking about inflammation of 70 trillion cells in our body. These membranes become inflamed. These bad fats come in, they congest this membrane, drive inflammation, blunting the receptor. So if I did this to you, you don't hear me as well. That's what's happening to our receptors with inflammation. This is the epidemic. So if you don't fix the receptor, if you don't downregulate inflammation, then how are you going to fix any hormone problem, including diabetes?
Get well.
How
do you get well? But that's what's not being told. You know, that is the unspoken deal, because they're being told they can't get well.
That
this is your medication the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
And you're saying, wait a minute, there's another way. Does anybody else feel hope? I feel immense hope. I mean, that is amazing. And it does work, and we're seeing it all over the country. So takeaway number one is to get these bad fats out and good fats in.
Pretty much do the opposite of the diabetes diet and you'll have your answer, you know. But I mean, the cellular healing diet is about getting to the cause, a novel concept. Remove the cause. Inflammation is the cause. You know, so when we're talking about, you know, we really have three things, major things that we know are driving cellular inflammation, which is blunting these hormone receptors, driving the hormone epidemic. You know, let's get rid of the cause and watch the body heal. God designed our bodies that way. I mean, this is nothing new. I don't heal anybody, nor do any doctor in this program heal anyone. The body, God designed our bodies to heal.
That's right.
When you remove the interference, the body does the healing. You know, and we act like, or doctors act like that it's some medication that heals you. I've got news for you. Medications sometimes are needed.
And they make you feel better.
Absolutely. And sometimes they're needed in emergency situations, or even as crutches. However, this is not health care. This is not healing. You know, healing is when you remove the interference, the body knows what to do. The problem is at the cell. If you don't fix the cell, you will never get well. You know, I can tell you from personal experience, and so can you. We have our own story. You know, but I was never able to get well until I actually got to the cause. Inflammation is the cause. Whether you're Time Magazine, all these magazines, inflammation, the silent killer, right? Well, what is it? We're talking about a cell.
Wow.
When these membranes become, and we're going to talk about this in one of the trainings about toxins, when that membrane becomes inflamed, now you can't get the good stuff in, you can't get the bad stuff out. And now you start even triggering genes that express conditions like diabetes. You know, part of this solution that we're so excited to bring them, that these practitioners are doing around the country, part of it is turning off this bad gene expression, changing gene expression. This is new science, just even in the last few years. But part of it, fixing this membrane, the cellular healing diet is part of it, but we have other things that we do too. Changing the way the gene expresses. If you're expressing diabetes at the DNA, then this needs to be changed, and that's part of what we're doing, and we're excited to bring in these solutions. So.
Well, you alluded that there's 3 things that drive this, and 2 of which are completely dietary related. We've talked about 1, fat. You know, bad fats drive inflammation. So we've talked about that unspoken solution. And the second thing that drives it is sugar. And that brings us to the second component of the cellular healing diet. So tell us what that second
I made the comment that you could pretty much do the opposite of the Diabetes Association diet and you'll kind of hit the right thing, right? Well, this is going to, if the saturated fat thing shocked them, then this is going to shock them. Okay, get rid of all grains in sugar, but this is the shocking part, even whole grains, because there's a message out there to eat whole grains, and I would argue that there are some components to whole grains that are healthy. They have more fiber, right? However, whole grains raise glucose, the same as processed grains, and the same as sugar.
Wow.
Okay, there's a reason for that. And I think we kind of have to back up and say, number one, we have to get rid of all things that turn to sugar, because once your cells have these receptors that are blunted, when we raise up glucose, we're blunting the receptors more. So to fix that cell membrane and the receptor, we have to stop beating them. In raising glucose beats them. I know what most of you are thinking. Well, I don't eat sugar. I don't eat a lot of sugar. I know, because I hear it all the time, even from diabetics. But the problem is the sugar that you're consuming is grains.
That's right.
Yeah.
People think I don't eat dessert, but they start their day off with a bowl.
Or I don't put sugar in my coffee, or whatever it is.
Or whatever. But they start off with oatmeal. So tell us, you've given me a great analogy before about how you liken a bowl of oatmeal even to a soda. So tell me about that.
And they can do this challenge at home. If you take a bowl of oatmeal and you eat it, and you measure your blood glucose level just by pricking your finger, an hour, and then 2 hours after you eat the oatmeal. You will note that if you drank a 12-ounce soda, your glucose levels an hour and 2 hours level would be virtually the same. Eating the oatmeal or drinking the soda. I could say the same for 2 slices of whole wheat bread. Whole wheat bread, not white bread. So your glucose levels would be about the same. If you do not control glucose, you'll not fix the cell. You will not get well. We have to take away all grains until we fix the cell. We can add ancient grains back in, and we'll talk a little bit about that, I think. But we can add them in after we fix the cell, down-regulate inflammation, and then that's going to be to genetic tolerance, really.
And you hit the exact next question. Everybody always says, well, when can I, is this my new life? Do I have to live without grains? And that usually is the question, when can I add grains back in,
When you fix the cell, and when you get well, and your practitioner says, yes, you can. So, but, a little bit about this grain in history, because I know that some people are out there, well, like, aren't grains healthy? Well, there's 2 sides to this story. Something happened in the 60s and 70s that we hybridized grain. We started changing grain. When we look at just the history of wheat, I think that it gives us an understanding of what's happened. There was a really brilliant man named Norman Borlaug. He set out to really solve world hunger. And he won a Nobel Prize, and I think that perhaps he should have won it, because he did make an impact in world hunger. But he created something he didn't intend to create: world obesity. When they hybridized the grain, and the reason they did that is because they created a wheat called dwarf wheat, which withstands environmental pressure much better than the old wheat, which was about 4 feet tall. Dwarf wheat is 2 feet tall. It handles drought better and winds and environmental stress. So it worked. He fed more of the planet. But in this hybridization process of changing the wheat, what happened is it denatured a lot of the proteins. And matter of fact, it even created a sugar called amylopectin A.
Wow.
So now these grains have become super sugars.
Wow.
And even whole grains arguably can have more of some of these components and denatured proteins even than refined grains. So that's why even whole grains. Look, we're familiar with gluten, right?
Sure.
You've heard of gluten?
Yeah, I've heard of gluten. It's popular, very popular right now.
Yeah, and most people say get rid of gluten, and I agree. You know, gluten is bad. However, if you took an ancient grain, and the ancient wheat, einkorn or emmer, are the two ancient wheats that were not hybridized, they have gluten. And if you were very gluten intolerant, if you ate those wheats and that gluten, you wouldn't react.
Wow.
See, what happened when they hybridized it, they changed these glutens and these proteins. But here's the caution. Gluten is not the only denatured protein. There's many other anti-nutrients even in grains, like lectins and phytates, that once your cell is inflamed, it will drive it further. Wow. So that's another reason why we have to get rid of all grains, you know, till we down-regulate inflammation. And then when we add them back, when we add in ancient grains, that we, you know, things like millets, amaranth, wild rice, things that haven't been hybridized that have these denatured proteins, and they're not as much of a super sugar.
Wow.
So when we hybridized it, we made a super sugar with denatured proteins that drives glucose more than table sugar.
Wow.
So this amylopectin A that's in these hybridized grains actually it raises glucose more than table sugar and more than even, like I said, regular grains. So this is the problem. We have to get rid of it.
Absolutely. You're telling me that these sugars and everything that's raising sugar is just pounding the cell.
Causes inflammation.
And it's causing
Blunts the
inflammation.
receptors.
So we're saying stop antagonizing your cells. Stop. Every single day that you're eating grains, you're antagonizing the cell, which is driving inflammation, which drives the body to respond in diabetes. So we're saying stop antagonizing and then start eating those healing foods, those good fats that will begin to heal that outer cell wall. It's absolutely simplistically fascinating, but it's not being told. It's like it's groundbreaking but simple at the same time. It's absolutely amazing. And there is a slight third part of the cellular healing diet as well that will lead you into the next part of training. But you said there are 3 things that drive inflammation, and we know bad fats and sugars, as we've just talked about, and toxins. And toxins is a very wide category that it's so wide that you have a whole nother training video just on toxins that you guys all get. However, there's a slight compartment of toxins that do fall under diet. So tell us what those are.
Well, look, in the training series, we're talking about that 1/3 studies show of diabetes is caused by toxins.
Wow.
You know, so many people are out there saying, hey, look, I've changed my diet. You know, I've done some of these things. I even are doing the correct exercise, which is another training that you're going to learn. And I still don't feel well. You know, I still am having trouble coming off my medication or whatever your goal is. Why is that? Well, you could fall into this category of 1/3 of diabetes being caused by toxins. And that has to be addressed correctly, and we're going to address that in the training video because true cellular detox is the key. But a toxin that dietarily we need to talk about is artificial sweeteners.
Yes.
I said do the opposite of the Diabetes Association diet. They promote artificial sweeteners. So many people watching this, I'm sure, are drinking diet sodas. Yeah. Especially that have diabetes.
Maybe even right now.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm sure that's the case. And thinking that you're doing better. Hey, I'm doing this for either not gain weight, to lose weight, or not to make my diabetes worse, you know, or whatever other condition. The fact is this. Arguably, the lesser of 2 evils is drinking the regular soda as opposed to the diet soda. It's been shown to make people fat, and yet people don't understand, well, why is that? Artificial sweeteners are a toxin. That we said that the toxins come in, attach to the membrane, and blunt the receptors.
Same issue.
I'm going to say it again, and I'll keep saying it. To fix hormone problems, and type 2 diabetes is hormone resistance.
Wow.
I could be speaking to you if you have a thyroid condition, weight loss resistance, or any hormone dysregulation. You have to fix the receptor. You have to get rid of the things that are driving inflammation, that are blunting the receptors. These artificial sweeteners blunt not only the receptor to insulin, but of another receptor called leptin, which is the receptor that tells your brain, or the hormone, I'm sorry, that tells your brain to burn fat for energy.
Wow.
So when these receptors get blunted, which these artificial sweeteners do, now your brain can't hear the message, right? So now it can't burn fat for energy, and now you're stuck as a sugar burner, which causes more type 2 diabetes, more problems with weight gain and the inability to lose weight. This is a growing epidemic in this country.
It causes a craving. If
Absolutely.
I'm only burning sugar for energy, then now all I want is sugar, whether that's in the form of carbohydrate or a sugar. So see guys, even your cravings are not necessarily your fault. It is again a cell issue. Is anyone else just wowed by this information as I am? I mean, it is absolutely fascinating, and he tipped the iceberg with toxins, because there's a whole nother training for you on toxins alone, because it is such a powerful part of healing this epidemic. And I'm going to tell you guys, the information that you've learned in this video is just the tip, but you've walked away with some practical steps in this training alone. Get the artificial sweeteners out. Stop eating sugar or anything that turns to sugar. Get the bad fats out of your diet. Get the good fats in your diet. Guys, those are 3 practical steps that I assure you will change your life.